The day my parents sold my dream car was the day my world cracked wide open. They didn't ask. They didn't warn me. One cold morning, I walked out with a chipped diner mug of cheap coffee in my hand, still half asleep from the night shift. I looked up and froze. The driveway was empty. My car, the one thing I had poured years of sweat into, was gone. Just like that. Sold. Traded away behind my back. And for what? For a shiny diamond bracelet my older sister could wave around at her engagement party, like a trophy she didn't earn. That car wasn't just a machine. It was my freedom. It was proof that even a small-town girl pulling graveyard shifts at a greasy diner could build something of her own. I still remember sliding fries across chipped plates at 3 a.m., refilling coffee for half-awake truckers, counting crumpled bills under buzzing fluorescent lights. Every tip I shoved into that shoebox under my bed brought me closer to the day I'd turn the key and whisper, "This is mine. I did this." But with one selfish decision, they ripped it away. And it wasn't just the car. It was the last fragile thread of respect my parents pretended to give me. Standing in that empty driveway, staring at the oil stain where my dream once stood, I felt smaller than I had ever been. My stepdad's voice echoed in my head, words he'd spat at me just a week earlier. "You'll never get anywhere. You're just a girl bussing tables at a diner." Back then, I tried to brush it off, but now, watching the emptiness in front of me, I wondered if it wasn't just mockery. Maybe it was a warning that in this house, I would always be the afterthought. I remember clutching the keys to my beat-up old sedan, the one that coughed black smoke every time I started it, and thinking, so this is it? This is my place in the family? Not a daughter, not even a sister, just the girl whose dreams could be sold off like spare change. Later that night, I found my mom leaning against the kitchen counter, twirling her wine glass like she was rehearsing for some soap opera. Without even looking at me, she muttered, "It's just a car. You'll get over it." The way she said it, flat, careless, like telling me to fold the laundry, made my blood run cold. They hadn't just sold my car. They had sold me out. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow, uneven circles above me. Every creak sounded like a countdown clock. And for the first time, the thought pressed down on my chest like a weight I couldn't move. This isn't about losing a car. It's about losing the last ounce of belief that I mattered to them. That was the night fate came knocking. I didn't know it yet. But the betrayal of that morning was only the opening act. The fire hadn't even started, and I was about to learn how fast it could spread. Losing the car should have been the worst of it, but it turned out that betrayal was only the beginning. Because after that day, it felt like the car wasn't the only thing they sold. It was like they sold me, my place in the family, my right to be seen. Every little thing I did became another excuse for them to tear me down. If I stayed late at the diner picking up extra shifts, I was irresponsible. If I came home quiet, too tired to talk, I was disrespectful. No matter what I did, I was wrong. And the sickest part, they didn't even hide it anymore. They wore their disdain like a badge, as if pushing me lower somehow lifted them higher. I'll never forget one night. I came home after a double shift, my shirt stained with grease, the smell of burnt fries tangled in my hair. It was close to 2 a.m. My hands ached from carrying trays. My legs felt like they'd snap under me. All I wanted was to collapse into bed. Instead, I found my stepdad waiting at the door. His shadow stretched long across the porch light. Before I could even reach for the knob, his voice cut through the freezing air. "Girls like you don't belong here anymore." Then he slammed the door. The sound echoed down the quiet street like a gunshot. I stood there, locked out, shivering in the snow, right in the same driveway where my dream car once sat. Back then, I thought losing the car had been the worst betrayal. But standing there, my fingers jammed deep in my coat pockets just to feel them at all. I realized this was worse. They hadn't just taken away my dream, they were taking away my home. I trudged back to my beat-up sedan and slid into the torn driver's seat. I didn't even bother turning the engine on. The silence was heavier than the cold. I sat there, watching my breath fog the windshield, each cloud vanishing before my eyes, just like everything I'd worked for. And then came the cruelest twist of the knife. A few days later, my sister waltzed into the kitchen. The diamond bracelet glittered on her wrist, catching every ounce of light in the room. Each time it clinked against the counter, it felt louder than thunder. And her smirk? It wasn't just a smile, it was a reminder, your dream bought this. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip that bracelet off and fling it across the room, but I didn't. Instead, I swallowed the rage, let it burn like acid in my chest. Because that's the thing about betrayal. Most of the time, you don't fight it right away. You carry it, quietly, and it eats at you from the inside out. That night, lying awake, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun lazy circles, their words replayed like a broken record. It's just a car. You'll get over it. They didn't understand. It was never about the car. It was about every sleepless night, every missed chance to be a normal girl because I was working. It was about the calluses on my hands, the aching in my bones, the dignity I thought I had earned. That car was proof I mattered, and now that proof was gone. The worst part, nobody else saw it. To the outside world, we were a picture-perfect family. Smiles at church, polite nods at the grocery store. But inside those walls, every laugh felt like it was at my expense. Every silence cut me down to size. Looking back now, I realized that was the moment I hit rock bottom. Sitting in that freezing car, my breath clouding the glass, staring out at the snow piling up on the hood. For the first time, I thought maybe they were right. Maybe I was nothing. Maybe I would never claw my way back from what they'd taken. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. Once you're there, the only direction left is up. That night in the freezing car, I made myself a promise. I was done being the family's punching bag. Done being the forgotten daughter whose dreams could be traded off like spare change. I couldn't control what they had taken from me, but I could control what I built next. So the very next morning, before the house stirred awake, I slipped out quietly. The snow was still piled high, the sky pale with the first trace of dawn. I drove my old sedan straight to the diner, not because I was scheduled, but because I begged for more hours. My manager looked me over like I'd lost my mind. "Kid, you sure? You've already been pulling doubles." I nodded, my voice steady even though my body screamed for rest. "Yeah, I'm sure." From that day forward, I said yes to everything. Morning rush, graveyard shifts, weekends everyone else turned down. My hands cracked from scrubbing plates. The smell of fryer oil clung to me like a second skin, and my feet ached so bad I could barely stand in the shower. But every dollar that slid across the counter meant something more now. I didn't just see tips, I saw fuel for something bigger. At night, when I finally collapsed on my mattress, I pulled out the small notebook I kept under my pillow. In it, I tracked every single dollar, every target I hit. The shoebox under my bed grew heavier by the week, but so did my resolve. And every time I thought of my sister's diamond bracelet catching the light, I wrote another line in bold, messy letters. "This will not be the end of me. Still, it wasn't easy. Every day I walked back into that house, the sneers were waiting. My stepdad muttered under his breath about how I smelled like grease. My mom rolled her eyes whenever I mentioned saving money, like it was some childish fantasy. But for the first time, their words didn't sink me. They fueled me. Every insult became another brick in the wall I was building to climb out. I started to notice changes in myself, too. The tired girl who used to shrink at every jab was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper. The diner uniform was still the same. Black polo, apron stained with grease. But the person wearing it wasn't. Even so, the climb was brutal. Nights stretched endless. Money trickled in painfully slow. There were mornings I woke up with my alarm and thought I couldn't do it again. And I'll be honest, there were moments I almost broke. Times I thought maybe they were right. Maybe I would never be more than a girl with diner tips and a shoebox of crumpled bills. But then, fate knocked again. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting outside the diner on break, sipping stale coffee from a paper cup, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick it up. Is this her name? The voice on the other end was calm, professional. This is Mr. Carter. I'm calling on behalf of your grandfather's estate. I froze. My grandfather. The man my parents barely mentioned, the one they dismissed as old and irrelevant. He had passed months ago, and I hadn't even been invited to the funeral. We need you to come to the office, the lawyer continued. There are matters that concern you directly. I hung up and stared at the phone in my hand, the coffee cooling untouched beside me. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something stir inside me. Hope. And I had no idea then just how much that call was about to flip my world upside down. I wish I could tell you that phone call was the instant everything changed. That I walked into the lawyer's office the next day and found a brand new life waiting for me. But life isn't a movie. Sometimes, even when hope knocks on your door, the world tests you one more time before it lets you through. That test came the night of my sister's engagement party. The house was lit up like a magazine spread. Chandeliers glowing through the windows, laughter spilling out into the yard, cars lined up down the street. Everyone was dressed like they were stepping onto a red carpet. Sequins, diamonds, tailored suits, everyone, except me. No one had bothered to tell me there was a dress code. So I walked in wearing my diner uniform, black polo, apron still faintly stained with grease, shoes squeaking from the mop water I'd trudged through just hours before. The second I stepped through the door, the atmosphere shifted. Music still played, people still laughed, but all eyes landed on me. And then came the silence, thick, suffocating. Like the whole room had been waiting for me to show up just to confirm what they believed, that I didn't belong. Then my mother's voice cut through the hush, cold, sharp. You should have stayed home. You're embarrassing us. The words hit harder than any slap, and then came the laughter, not polite, not nervous, cruel, loud. My uncle even raised his glass like he was toasting my failure. My sister, dressed in shimmering white, lifted her wrist, letting the diamond bracelet sparkle under the chandelier as if to say, "This is what really matters, not you." I stood there, heat crawling up my neck, my face burning red. For a split second, I thought about running, just slipping out the back door, disappearing into the night, and never coming back. But my legs wouldn't move. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the faint memory of my grandfather, the only one who'd ever slipped me a $20 bill with a wink and whispered, "Don't let anyone tell you you're less. Still, I couldn't stop the shame that poured over me like ice water. I walked out before the night was over, but the truth is, I didn't leave. I was pushed out. Their laughter followed me down the hall, out into the cold air. I ended up sitting in my old sedan parked under the streetlight, the same one that rattled every time I turned the key. I stared at my reflection in the cracked rearview mirror. Hollow eyes, grease-smudged face, shoulders slumped forward like the weight of the world was crushing me. For the first time, I thought maybe they were right. Maybe I was nothing. That's the cruelest thing about humiliation. It doesn't just wound you in front of others. It eats away at you when you're alone. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, whispering to myself, "This is it. This is all I'll ever be." But then, as the faint sound of laughter carried through the night air from the glowing house behind me, something shifted inside. A whisper in the back of my mind reminded me of that phone call, my grandfather's lawyer, the estate, the unfinished story waiting just beyond these walls. And that's when it hit me. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe this humiliation was the final test before the climb, because rock bottom has a way of tricking you, making you believe the road is gone. But sometimes it's just a bend. So I sat there, humiliated, broken, but clutching on to one thought that refused to die. They think I'm nothing. But soon, they'll see everything they threw away. The morning after that humiliating party, I dragged myself to the lawyer's office. My diner uniform still smelled like fryer oil, and the shame from last night clung to me like a second skin. The office smelled faintly of leather and coffee. Mr. Carter, the lawyer, slid a thick envelope across the desk. His voice was steady, but there was a softness in his eyes. "Your grandfather left specific instructions. The estate, the land, the trust, all of it is in your name." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I unfolded the papers. The ink blurred through tears I hadn't even realized were falling. My grandfather, the one man who saw me when everyone else dismissed me, had left it all to me. Even in death, he had chosen me. When I walked through the front doors of that estate for the first time, the weight of everything hit me. Marble floors gleamed under my worn sneakers. Sunlight streamed through windows taller than anything in my childhood home. I ran my hand along the polished banister, each step echoing like thunder in my chest. This wasn't just a house. It was proof, a monument to the fact that I mattered, even when my family swore I didn't. For weeks, I kept the secret. I went to work. I saved money. I lived small. All the while, the keys to a new life sat heavy in my pocket. And then came the call I had been waiting for. "Family meeting," my mother announced, her voice clipped and cold. They expected me to show up small, quiet, apologetic. But this time, I came different. I pulled up not in my rattling old sedan, but in a sleek black SUV. The tires crunched on the gravel driveway, each sound sharper than their laughter used to be. When I stepped out, silence rippled across the room. My uncle's smirk faltered. My sister tried to tug her sleeve down to hide the bracelet that had once mocked me. My stepdad leaned back in his chair, suddenly unsure of himself. I didn't speak right away. Instead, I walked slowly to the table. I pulled out the heavy set of keys, the keys to the estate, the land, the life they thought I'd never touch, and dropped them onto the polished wood. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Their laughter died instantly. My mother's face went pale. What is this?" she stammered. I met her eyes, a calm smile tugging at my lips. "Funny," I said evenly. "You sold my dream car, but in the end, I inherited something you'll never touch. No shouting, no screaming, just silence. A silence heavier than every insult they'd ever thrown at me. My stepdad's jaw tightened, but his eyes fell to the floor. My sister lowered her gaze, the sparkle of her bracelet suddenly looking like cheap glass compared to the keys glinting between us. My mother's lips trembled, her voice breaking in a whisper. I didn't know you had it in you. But she was wrong. I'd always had it in me. They just never looked close enough to see. And in that moment, standing taller than I ever had in that house, I realized something. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes the quietest victories are the loudest. The weight of their silence was sweeter than any apology they could have offered. For the first time, the balance had shifted. For the first time. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the one they could no longer ignore. The silence in that room was heavier than all the years of insults combined. For once, they had nothing to say. No mocking laughter, no cutting remarks, just silence. My sister was the first to crack. She tugged her sleeve down, trying to cover the diamond bracelet that once gleamed like a weapon against me. Her shoulders curled in, her chin dropped. The sparkle that she once flaunted so proudly now looked like nothing more than glass compared to the keys on the table. My stepdad leaned back in his chair, arms crossed tight, jaw clenched. This was the same man who slammed doors in my face, who told me, "Girls like you don't belong here." Now he couldn't meet my eyes. He looked small, like the power he thought he held over me had slipped right through his fingers. And then there was my mother. Her lips trembled, her face drained of color. She stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "I didn't know you had it in you," she whispered. I let the words hang in the air, because the truth was I always had it in me. They just never cared to see. I picked up the keys and slid them back into my pocket. My voice was steady, calm. "You don't have to believe in me," I said, "because I already believe in myself." And in that moment, I saw it. Something new in their eyes. Not love, not even respect, but fear. The kind of fear people feel when they realize the person they thought would always stay small has grown too big to control. I turned to leave, my footsteps echoing through the hall. I didn't slam a door, I didn't raise my voice, but the sound of my heels against that floor was louder than every fight we'd ever had. That night, driving away in the SUV, I glanced once into the rearview mirror. Behind me was the house where I'd been humiliated, dismissed, forgotten. And for a flicker of a second, I almost wished they would run out, stop me, say the words I had waited my whole life to hear. "We were wrong. We're proud of you." But they didn't. And maybe they never will. And strangely, I realized I didn't need them to, because their punishment wasn't mine to give. Their punishment was losing me, losing the daughter they had treated like an afterthought, losing the chance to stand beside me as I rose, losing the right to claim even a sliver of the success they swore I'd never have. As for me, my price was pain, but that pain had become my fuel, my fire, my freedom. It's been months since that night, months since I laid those keys on the table and watched their laughter die in their throats, months since I walked out of that house for the last time, and honestly, I haven't stepped back since. And I don't need to. These days, my mornings don't begin with slammed doors or cold stares. They begin with quiet, with sunlight spilling across wide windows, with the rich smell of coffee filling the air. Not the burnt diner kind, but real coffee. brewed slow in a home that finally feels like mine. I sit at a solid oak table. One I didn't borrow, one I didn't beg for. It's mine. Just like this life I've built, piece by piece, from the ashes of what they tried to burn down. Sometimes, when I drive past the old diner, I catch a glimpse of my younger self in the reflection of the glass. A tired girl in a grease-stained uniform, counting crumpled bills in a shoebox under her bed. And instead of shame, I smile. Because those nights weren't wasted. They were the bricks, the foundation that carried me here. And here's the twist I never saw coming. I don't hate them anymore. I don't need to. They already showed me who they are. My greatest revenge wasn't proving them wrong. It was proving myself right. I was always more than the shadow they treated me as. Always more than the girl whose dreams could be sold off for spare parts. Losing that car? Back then, it felt like the end of everything. But now I see it differently. It wasn't the end. It was the starting line. Because without that betrayal, I might never have pushed hard enough. I might never have discovered the strength waiting inside me. And that's what I want you to hear. Sometimes, the worst betrayal becomes the fuel for the best comeback. Sometimes, silence turns into power. And sometimes, letting go is the sharpest form of revenge. So if you're sitting there tonight, feeling like the outsider, the forgotten one, the one who's been underestimated and cast aside, listen to me. Your story isn't over. Maybe today feels like your dream was stolen. Maybe tonight you're staring at the ceiling, wondering if you'll ever matter. But tomorrow? Tomorrow might just be the beginning of your twist. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Destiny has a way of giving back more than you ever imagined. But only if you refuse to quit before the twist arrives. And if my story hit you in the heart, share yours. Drop a comment and tell me, what was your dream car? What did you lose that pushed you to rise stronger? Because trust me, someone out there needs to hear it. Don't forget to like this video if you believe karma always finds its way, and subscribe, because the next story I share might just be the one you've been waiting for. This chapter, it's done. But it's not the last, because even when they sell your dream, fate has a funny way of handing you back something far greater. This isn't the end. It's only the beginning.